This is not easy for me to say, but it's something that repeats what Charlie had said. So I'm trying to grapple with this out loud, so let's see if I can get this straight. He said that there's two extremes in life: love of food and love of God. And I think the outcome is different, or yet the same, but only slightly different within the experience of mankind versus the experience of womankind. For a woman, love of food brings children into the world, because without a love of food she cannot do this. And my mother, I say this because my mother was put on a strict diet by my father, and she failed to carry to term. Once she gradually, over the years, came to entrain herself with the outcome of the diet, become one with it, fuse with it. Yet on the other hand, the complementary opposite to that is that if man loves God rather than food, mankind can produce children. It's completely the opposite. When it comes to bringing new generation of human into the earth, it's completely opposite. Because if man loves God, not food, he can use yoga, the siddhis, to manifest and materialize a new nervous system, a physical physiology. We have this in the tradition of various lineages of yoga. You know, there are different schools of yoga or different paths. And it used to be the case that, the way the story goes is that when a lineage started out in which the man manifested his disciple, a guy, and it carried on the lineage. And then the shift in consciousness, apparently the earth kept dropping, prior to the inception of the Kali Yuga. It kept dropping such that he couldn't do that anymore. And he had to take a woman, a wife, to bear a son, to carry on the lineage. And if he couldn't even do that, then the lineage would die out. Apparently nobody bothered to go outside the lineage to find a disciple, I suppose. Maybe because there was no guarantee that the disciple would become enlightened and thus carry on the lineage. So the lineage would dry up. It would die out. Because yoga has to have enlightened masters to carry on its tradition, any school of yoga, any school, any path. And if the disciple fails to become enlightened, then the school of yoga has not proven, it has not validated itself. And without self-validation, it's a lie, because the whole point of yoga is a path to God. But it illustrates, by way of a side effect, how men are different from women. Charlie said we'll never understand it entirely. Yet, there seems to be an understanding, and he gave it to us. A clue, a hint. That the way we operate in terms of how we bring new life into this world, which I automatically, think is something adorable. Charlie did it in his own way. I don't know. All I know is that he managed to clone himself. And the funny thing is, it's built around a very specific karma or flaw or oversight that tweaks the clones so that it's not exactly like the original. It's slightly different. And as I recall, I'm trying to recall what I realized at the time. And I think it was that it was different based on a flaw, a particular, in which the flaw was that it failed to be an exact copy in some particular area of the primary physiology's consciousness, which is karma. And so there was a hole there, a gap, something missing, making it less than a perfect replica of the original. But it was close enough that it could fool just about anybody. And I say this because I think he made multiple clones. Because I came upon another individual that was associated with that identity of the primary physiology, because the soul can only be with one of them. The soul is a monad, Charlie would say, a monad, indivisible. So it can only be with one of them. And the others don't have a soul, an inner light. Yet, they get their light from the primary physiology so long as it's alive. The primary keeps them going. And it can, because the primary has at least a state of unity consciousness in which it can project itself to any of the clones to be as good as if they are the primary, is what I mean to say. In other words, the primary makes up the difference because of the ability to project itself to any of its clones. So he already had manifested, materialized, a physiology that was a son. That is what the gurus of the past yugas did. They could materialize a disciple. That's what he did. That was what those clones are. They're disciples in that tradition. And that means his love of his master is rock solid, Maharishi. It's totally rock solid, or else he wouldn't have been able to do that. He wouldn't have been able to do that. And I think he was hoping that I would be able to do the same based on my love of him. Yet there was a stipulation. When you take on a love of a master, you take on the love of all the idiosyncrasies, be they whatever, good, bad, or indifferent. And I failed to take on one love, and that was or one devotion, and that was the devotion to wearing clothes. Because I was in rebellion to my own family for its dishonesty in their way of doing things. At least, I can only say for what I saw. My father was dead long before I became a thinking, rationalizing individual, so I don't know how I would have reacted had he lived. But given the family that was left remaining, my brother, my mother, and myself, it seemed to go in totally a dishonest direction. And of course, I couldn't have been born without it. My mother had to love food in order to bear me, but she loved her husband instead. And that prevented her at some point from being able to materialize children. In other words, the baby-making machine of the womb shut down. Now, it wasn't merely because she was on a raw food vegan diet. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that they were alcoholics. My father bought fruits and vegetables in bulk, stored it in the garage. It started to rot and ferment. And he got away with it because he smoked a pipe, but nobody else in the family did. Nobody else in the family smoked anything, not even incense. Not even incense. So he got away with it, living on a starvation diet, and be an alcoholic at the same time because he had the tobacco pipe smoke to counterbalance the effect of the spoiled, rotten fruit.